I don't get to say this often, but today we're having a conversation about tampons, lubrication, menstrual wellness, pads, and investing. I mean, if that's not literally this morning, one of my first thoughts was, as a Gen Xer, what an amazing time for all the things that we say that aren't changing and aren't moving. What an amazing time that there's two South Asian women sitting here in a public forum having a conversation about a company that's about menstrual wellness, when I still have memories, and it sounds like your TikTok community does too, of there being such a stigma still to talk about menstrual wellness, vaginal dryness, and all the things, and lubricated tampons. All these words are still very closeted, and that's one of the things I learned. And just even looking and listening to some of the comments in your community. But let's take a step back. Nadia, thank you for doing this. Thank you for making the time, because I know a founder on the middle of a work week isn't exactly just hanging doing nothing, especially with a growing brand like yours. So to take time out like this, thank you so much. Let's just get right into it. I would love to understand and the journey of how you got to starting Marlow, which is a menstrual wellness company that launched the first ever lubricated tampon.
Correct. So
take us through that.
It actually all started in our fourth year of university. I've known my co-founders for about 6 years now. We were friends before starting the brand, and it actually started organically. We were having a conversation. We were doing an entrepreneurship capstone course in our fourth year, and our professors told us to find a problem that we're passionate about solving. And I remember we were going about our week and trying to see different spaces, and the menstrual health space just kept coming up as something that seemed like there was no innovation in
Right.
area. And I remember my co-founder specifically, she's a competitive swimmer. She shared with us that she has a lot of pain inserting tampons, and she's always found it uncomfortable. But because she's a swimmer, she had to use it to compete in her sport.
And so just live that way, put up with it.
You just put up with it. And so she was really determined to find a solution. She had gone to the gynecologist, and the gynecologist told her to spit on her tampon to make it easier to insert. And we were just blown away. We thought, how could this be the only solution? There's so much innovation happening around us, and yet the menstrual health space is just being overlooked. And so we were really inspired. We started trying Vaseline, coconut oil, seeing what we could make work, and we settled on lubricant. It's designed for this purpose, and yet no one's ever thought of combining it with the tampon.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's been such a lack of innovation?
I think because the space is monopolized by a few bigger CPG players, they've never really had an incentive to innovate. They know they have a monopoly on the market. They can just put whatever it is out there and customers will put up with it. Whereas starting to see a shift, consumers are demanding transparency with ingredients. They're sustainable options, and they don't want to just put up with what it is. Pinterest had this trend going around called mindful menstruation. So people have more of an active approach to their menstrual and sexual wellness. It's like now bigger companies are being forced to change and adapt to some of the changing consumer needs.
So you're in the course, and this is what you end up picking out. As you said you were researching with different kinds of Vaseline. I'm assuming you didn't research with spit.
No.
Nope. Okay. Vaseline and other kinds of coconut oil. Was that still within the structure of the course, or at this point was like, when did there's something more here? When did that happen? And was this a business course, by the way?
It was a business entrepreneurship.
Okay.
At the end of the course, all this initial research, prototyping was all done in the course. And at the end, you have a pitch competition where you can meet. And so we won that pitch competition. And our professors were like, we think it's more than just a little, pitch competition at school. You should really consider keep going with this, apply to some accelerators, do some programming. So we did the Next 36 accelerator. We did League of Innovators, and we started taking this forward. We raised the investment round. We started actually going through real product development with a research lab, testing it, going through Health Canada approval. And then we realized it was so much more than just that initial prototyping and research in the course.
What was it, a consensus coming out of that course when you received this feedback, all four of you, that let's start a business? Were you taking business because entrepreneurship's always been a part? Because every founder, it's the range of, oh, my family comes from business to business. Oh no, that was never in my mind. Like, coming out of that and with that feedback, was it a consensus, or was there a little bit of like, we got to convince a few? Because it's a big step to say, hey, let's come right out of school debts, this, that, and start a brand.
I think all of us were in business and we were drawn to entrepreneurship, mainly impact you can make. And we thought, we're young women, we can be building our dream culture, our dream company, our dream brand. But it was really Marlo specifically that was the catalyst to be like, we should do entrepreneurship, because we fell so much in love with the problem and with the space. We couldn't believe that something like this didn't exist yet. And so that was kind of the real reason. We weren't considering entrepreneurship completely. We were interested in it. We weren't sure, but it was just Marlo specifically and the problem that we were like, we have to do something with this.
So what was that journey with Health Canada like? I mean, this is all, I assume, that space that any of you had experience with. And then League of Innovators, I hold a special place in my heart. Melissa Allen, who heads it up over there, I'm invested in her fund. What she's doing is amazing work. But talk to me about two things. One, that Health Canada journey and getting the approval, because that's a really important piece, especially for something that's going inside your body. I don't know if it's a requirement. I'd love you to answer that. And then secondly, you're raising money. You kind of went right into it. So talk about both of those things.
So on the Health Canada side, we're doing it during COVID, which added a whole other set of challenges, because they were very tied up with vaccine rollout and all the policies. Things that were supposed to take about 6 months to be reviewed were taking up to a year. So there was a backlog. It wasn't something that we were necessarily familiar with, but we had really strategic partners who helped us. So we ended up working with a regulatory consultant who helped move our application forward, as well as that research lab who had brought many products to market before. That was really helpful. Even our manufacturer got heavily involved in the product development process. He just fell in love with the problem space as well. And so he helped us, and he's been a great partner. The process was difficult. There was a lot of tests you had to do. And I think working with those partners made it a lot easier, because they were telling us, okay, this is the kind of test you'll need to do. This is how we're going to study. This is how we're going to evaluate the outcomes. So that was definitely really helpful, but it was a new process that we weren't used to going through.
Right. And I'm assuming having that group, like, not that this was ever something that happened, but do you think entrepreneurship would have been as interesting to you if it was you and Marlo? Or do you think a part of Marlo and the journey of it, yes, you have a love for the problem, but what aspect of it is also the fact that you're doing this with 3 friends?
I think that definitely adds to it. We always say when we meet solo founders that we have no idea how they do it, because there's so much work involved, and we're lucky that we have a diverse skill set. So there's different areas of the business that we're drawn to. I'm really drawn to like the stakeholder engagement, the fundraising, whereas one of the founders has led our entire social media strategy, and she's just blown that out of the water. So I think we're really lucky that we have those diverse skill sets that can complement each other. And if one of us is feeling down one day, the other one just immediately is like, okay, let's pick it back up and try and motivate other and keep us staying engaged. So definitely very lucky to have co-founders, and I can't imagine doing it without them.
Would you go as far as to say that co-founders with diverse skill sets is what makes it work?
I think so, because I think we all have those different interests and those different skills that allow us to all contribute in different ways. And for me, social media is not something I'm very good at, and so I'm really glad. And it's one of our biggest advantages.
I want to get into that.
We have Kiara to help and form that as well.
So LOI and the fundraising, talk a little bit about that as well. How did that go?
Definitely. So we raised a $500,000 pre-seed round. That was in May 2021 that we closed that. And that went to the product development, went to initial building of the brand and getting our community to where it is to date. It was definitely an interesting journey. I think the biggest thing we had to get used to was telling the problem to someone who didn't experience it. We pitched to a lot of male investors who maybe don't menstruate. And it was really interesting because we'd do these pitches with them and they would say, I don't know, I'm not too sure. Then they would go back to some of the menstruators in their lives, whether that be their wife, their children. And then they would come right back and say, no, this is a big problem. Everyone agrees with it. Everyone can't believe why this doesn't exist. We'd even send some product to the menstruators in their lives. They'd say, no, we have to invest in this. This is incredible. So we got really used to finding ways to spin the problem to someone who doesn't actually experience it. And whether that's through testimonials, through showing our TikTok data and how many comments there are from people who experience this pain point, we have to be really excited about that.
That's an interesting thing that you're saying, that for, kind of presenting the problem to a lot of men, a lot of times the conversation has been, and I'm not negating that it doesn't exist, is that, presenting to men about something that is a very much a female problem shuts the door down to the conversation immediately. But what I'm hearing from you was that it kind of reminds me a little bit of when you hear of certain toys and kids brands, that you hear this conversation of like, oh, I went in to ask my kids about it and they said, oh, do this, or yeah, this is amazing. And it's interesting to hear and positive that a lot of these male investors went back and furthered the conversation by saying and validating basically with people who is their kind of validation market, their partners. And that's a positive thing. Like, would you say that was more common or less common?
I would say it was more common, and actually hard to say is some people actually even did it even before the call, which would be amazing. We'd get on the call and they said, oh, prior to this call, I spoke to my wife, I spoke to my daughter, I spoke to this friend, and this is what I'm learning about the space. And so it was really nice to see that people were taking an active approach to actually trying to learn and not just questioning it right off the bat. And I think also trying to find those analogies of maybe think about it as putting in a contact without solution or other things that experience a similar friction. Just kind of paint that picture in their head of what this might feel like.
Do you think that this, like, just hearing this feels like there's a shift? And is it brands like NYX, like one of the big ones, really? Is it brands like that have really kind of opened conversations and opened the possibility of conversations? Like, do you attribute it to that? Because to me, this is a really positive thing for, just to anyone out there or founders who might be, wanting to explore spaces that are conventionally not something male investors have been interested in. Hearing feedback like that is really promising. Like, I'm really thrilled to hear that that's kind of how they responded to it.
I think companies like NYX definitely played a huge role in that. I think seeing the success, I mean, she had one of the largest exits of all Canadian female founders. And so I think being able to have those success stories that we can point to, they're in our decks. We're showing these are the other companies that are seeing success, showing how widespread the problem is. Like, this is something that the 50% of the population for 39 years. So not only emphasizing the impact and the problem, but actually showing this is a huge financial opportunity. It's a $50 billion market. The lifetime value of these customers are huge because they're getting their period for 39 years. And there's so much loyalty and actually even referrals in this space. Once you find a product you like, you're passing it on to your sister, you're passing it on to your daughter, you're telling all your friends at lunch.
We are sharers. We are joy in saying this is something I've found as a solve, and the joy we get as, I think, most women, except for that one woman I will never forget, who I remember asking her perfume, and she said, no, I'm not going to share it. And I was like, oh, but there's that, and then there's a TikTok meme I think going around about like the don't ask me what I'm wearing before anybody else cops it. Besides those two, everybody else, women love to share. So yes, and especially something like this. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to take it back to the product. Mm-hmm. I understand. I've spent time on your TikTok about what a lubricated tampon is, but break it down to someone who hasn't had a chance yet and who hopefully will go to your TikTok after this. What does it mean when you say a lubricated tampon? So it's if you have a product, because you're there, maybe even, I don't know if you do. Guys, on IG Live, you can even get up and keep talking. I mean, yeah, maybe a product shows it well. So if you have a chance. Let me see. You have one?
I have one kind of nearby. Let me see if I can.
Yeah. I can keep the folks entertained. I can. Oh, wait. I guess if this was TikTok, I'm immediately expected to do a dance. But I won't. I will say that it's some of the best products out there, and I hope you can hear me, Nadia, are like simple solves. It's not trying to be complicated.
No, not at all.
Simple solve.
Exactly.
That's what makes people kind of go, oh, where has this been my whole life? And to me, I see this and I go, oh, where has this been my whole life?
Exactly.
Show it, please. Do the honors.
So this is our tampon box. It comes with 18 tampons, and when you open it, you can see here, we really focused a lot on the unboxing experience. We wanted to make it feel like you're excited to get your period, and that's something that a lot of our community members say. They say we look forward to our package every single month. It makes our so exciting. And then it comes with a bottle of lubricant, or actually the tampon itself, I should talk about that, is 100% organic cotton. It's an applicator, so it's made out of a sugarcane-based material as opposed to a petroleum-based plastic, and it's a compostable wrapper. So a lot of the aspects of environmental sustainability are prioritized, and it comes in light, regular, and super, so depending which absorbency you need. Yeah. And then it's paired with this lubricant. It's travel size, so really easy to just toss in your purse.
Okay, so it's great for travel. Okay.
Great for travel. 30 ml, but you can take it in a carry-on if you need to. And the biggest part is this cross-slit valve, and I'll try and show it on camera.
Yeah.
The cross-slit valve, we like to describe it as when you put a straw into a pop cup. Yeah. That's valve is at the top of our bottle, so that when you dip your tampon in, it makes it really smooth and an even coat, and it's not like a messy process. People were trying to like pour lubricant onto their tampons. People were already trying to use the solution, and so ours is just an easier way to apply lubricant to the tampon. So then you just dip it into the bottle, and then it comes out, and there's enough for a 2-month cycle, depending how much you use it.
And it's a subscription model. You don't have to worry about ordering. It just shows up right on time.
Exactly. And that was one of the big pain points that people shared, that they're always making those last minute runs to Shoppers or to CVS, and they got their period and they're like, why did I forget to restock? So this just takes away that worry for you, and there's no strings attached. If you're going on vacation, you need to pause it for a month, that's totally okay. You want to gift it to a friend for a month, that's okay. We really try and make it flexible to match your cycle and whatever you need.
2 comments I have to make. One, tell me how many times you use no strings attached. It's a pun.
A lot.
I mean, are we now doing tampon humor? Because I'm so here for it.
Yes, let's do it.
That's the first thing. The second thing, I go back to saying, and I want to touch upon this before we jump into the social media piece, which we cannot not talk about. 2 South Asian women having this conversation. What was it like for you to share this with your friends, loved ones, family, that, hey, this is what I'm starting? I mean, like I said, there's still a stigma for so many cultures. I don't want to make this about a South Asian thing only, for so many women, about just talking about this.
I was definitely nervous to start talking about it, and I think I went on my own learning journey. Sometimes we forget and we don't realize how comfortable we are talking about this topic, and how in conversations it is very stigmatized, and we have to realize, okay, maybe we need to hold back a bit. But my parents have been so supportive, and it's not something we really talked about growing up. They never really gave me any education about it, not to their fault or anything, but just thing that I feel like in our culture is normalized. But now at the dinner table, my dad will be like, how's Marlo? Oh, I saw this article about tampons and it made me think of you. And oh, did you this about lubrication? So it's just the topic of dinner conversation. So he'll share it with his friends. He shares it on LinkedIn. So I never thought I would be having those conversations with my dad about dryness and tampons.
Wow.
He's really
yay, mom and dad. And same reaction from friends, from others as well?
Same reactions. I mean, sometimes family gatherings for maybe the older people, there's a little bit of still, but are very supportive, and they're always commenting, ordering us. They really are supportive as well.
Wonderful. Love it. And that's a surprising story to hear, I have to say, because, this there's still a range of kind of a range of reactions you can expect from generations kind of above us. So that's incredible. And I'm sure it's just such a mental stress checked off to think that I'm doing this without the support of the people that I want cheering me on. So that's wonderful. Let's get into the social media strategy. Now, I know you said you don't handle it, but I'm sure, like every founder, there's no aspect of the business you are not deeply connected to and know what's going on. How you said this early on, that you understood that, hey, there's a real issue around vaginal dryness and just discomfort in putting it on. Did you know right off the bat that was going to be the conversation that a lot of social media was focused on? Did you know right off, how did you get to that point and figuring out it's TikTok that we really want to have those conversations on? What was that process like?
We did a lot of testing in the early days, especially with copy, because we realized that there was a few different value props that we could be testing around nutrition pain that you mentioned, around sustainability, around the branding, and in general, the lack of education. So we bunch of these value props on our Instagram, on our TikTok, and we realized that the insertion pain was the one that always got the most traction. I had a video on insertion pain get over 8 million views, and it's still on our TikTok. You can see there's thousands and thousands of comments from people saying, why does something like this not exist yet? I can't believe I'm not the only one. And so I think there was a lot of sense of solidarity in seeing that also people were experiencing this problem. And we realized that this was sticking. There was nothing else like this in the market. So we started to double down and make all of our content around this. We still incorporate other aspects of content so that we can be that one-stop shop for learning. But this value prop specifically was really resonating with customers and consumers. And it wasn't something that anyone else was tackling. So we decided to double down on making content around that.
Yes, one of your co-founders had that issue, but did that surprise you? Is the test and learn piece can be a journey in and of itself for founders, where they want to go with this one approach, but then the feedback that they get is different. Is that just generally, what did you take away from that test and learn kind of process?
I think we weren't honestly surprised because we knew that we'd have to go to this test and learn. We thought all the value props would be appealing.
Yeah.
But as this one is just, it happens to so many people, especially in our target demographic of getting your period for the first time. And no matter who you talk to, even if they're comfortable with tampons now, they always remember their first experience. They always talk about how it was painful, or they were so nervous, they had so much anxiety, they were going through it alone. That's what no one really went talk to them through that process. So now Marlo almost as like a big sister who's talking you through the process, and it's so much more than just the product. It's actually a space and almost a persona and figure that you can turn to ask all your questions. And so when we run our polls on our Instagram, we get so many comments from people saying, please write a blog about this, or can you talk about this next? People are really drawn to this figure of, and like advice figure that they can turn to their questions answered.
So the name of your co-founder who's leading social strategy versus what's her name?
Kiara.
Okay. So you'll have to speak on Kiara's behalf. Again, I'm sure you're familiar with the TikTok strategy itself. Like, what is that process like for you guys with building content? Is it go with what's trending? Is it a bit of free flow, or is it very well thought out? Like, take us through that, because again, it's a new layer for founders that didn't exist pre-social media, which is the, hey, I'm running this business, I'm trying to do all these things. Oh, but I also have to think of social. It is most probably one of the most common pain points. And maybe I'm projecting a little about the cushy when I say that, but it is a pain point. So you're building, if Kiara's building, you guys are building social, and specifically TikTok. What is that like? Is it structured? Is it free flow? Take us through that part.
So we try and plan it on a weekly basis, and we have both of what you mentioned. So we have a lot of pre-planned content that behind the scenes of the founder. We want to have some product-focused content, replying to some of the questions in our comments, having some focused on just like general education, some mythbusters, and then we'll also leave a few spots each week for whatever sound is trending. Let's try and apply it well. So we try and have a mix of both, but we almost have these like categories and buckets of content that we can then fill in and apply trending sounds or apply different things and have room for that flexibility. Sign up to a lot of those email newsletter lists where on Monday or Tuesday, they'll say, here are the trending sounds of the week. And then we can then have a lot of that effort taken off of our plates and just say, okay, these are what it is, and let's apply that. Kiara was doing a lot of the TikTok along with my other co-founder, Harriet, by herself. But we actually hired a content creator because we realized how much of our sales were being driven from TikTok. I think it's about 80% of our sales come from TikTok, which is mind-blowing. And so we hired a full-time content creator and all TikTok for us.
And is that who's the face of it right now? Like, there's a good
face of it. Yeah. Asia, she is incredible. And she has her own platform. She has Vulvodynia and is really active in the vaginal health and vaginal and menstrual wellness space. So she now leads our content strategy. And I think because she's so familiar with the space and she has that following already, she's helped take it to the next level. So it's a combination of her expertise with our content strategy and bringing it all together.
Finding her, how was that? Like was that a difficult process? Like, I mean, it's a conversation for everybody, regardless of size of company now, is finding right and attracting the right talent.
I think we were so lucky. We worked with different micro influencers to gift them our product. And so we looked at like common hashtags around like tampon talk or menstrual health. And we were going, I think maybe through tampon talk, and found her and saw all the videos she was putting out, offered to gift her some product, get her to talk about it. And then she just connected so well with the brand and said, hey, is there any way I can further support? And we were like, actually want to get a TikTok content creator. Is that something you're open to? And so it kind of happened organically, but it started with that test and learn approach again of sending her product on an influencer side, getting her to PC, and then saying, this content's doing really well. Would you be open to doing more content for us as well?
I saw a question that popped up, by the way, and it's a good one to ask about supply chain. Where is the product manufactured, supply chain, and distribution? And were the recent post-pandemic or pandemic supply chain issues, was that a factor as you built out Marlo? That's a good question. So that's a bit of a tangent, but I do want to get that addressed.
Definitely. So we actually manufacture our tampons in Europe. We really wanted to make it local, but with all of the sustainability aspects, also wanted to really prioritize that light size, which is preferred by any of the North American manufacturers. And specifically for our target demographic, the light size is so important to them that we knew as that. So it's manufactured in Europe, and our lubricant is manufactured in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
We have a third-party logistics partner here in Scarborough, right outside Toronto, and it gets shipped there, and they handle all the fulfillment and shipping for us. So whenever a customer places an order, whether it's in Canada or the U.S., they ship out the product.
So you're doing U.S. shipping out of Canada as well?
We are. That's a little bit of a pain point right now.
I was going to say, that's an interesting...
It's a bit expensive.
Yeah.
Really want to set up, we're fundraising, and with our raise, one of the biggest things is setting up a partnership with our U.S. 3PL. We have talked with them, and the shipping costs are going to go down in half as soon as we partner with them. So
I imagine that is, I mean, as you know, we have a few minutes left, and you kind of, it's like you predicted what my next question was going to be, which is I like to kind of, you know, this is an opportunity to like, what's your ask? What are the things, what are the pain points that you're trying to solve for right now? I feel like, yes, you're fundraising. So, you know, maybe that is one of the asks of like people who are out there, but I'd love to hear it from you. What's a pain point you're dealing with that you'd like to solve? That's a very active thing. And then what's an ask that we can put out into the world?
I think the pain point would just be getting the brand out there as much as possible, because it's such a stigmatized space. We realize that we need many touch points with the consumer before they purchase. They need to just that initial awareness touch point. We need to start to provide some education in sections they might have about the product, and then they'll convert. So I think just finding ways to get the product out there. If you are interested, please checking out the website and family and friends who it might be applicable to. And then on the ask side, we are fundraising. Now that we've figured out which marketing channels work to convert a consumer, and we know that TikTok specifically is such a big channel for us, we're ready to double down with some paid content. Right now, all of our revenue and growth to date has all been organic. So starting to double down with boosting some paid ads, doing some paid influencer content. We've only been doing organic influencer content.
Incredible what the community that you've built. And for, again, if you haven't gone to their TikTok, like really, like the community you built on just organic work says so much. I mean, it says that there's a need for this.
Thank you. No, I think it's people are ready for this and they want to see it, and we just need to reach more customers than ever before, because we know the channels that are working. And so with this fundraise, we're raising $2 million. About 60% of it is already soft circled, which we're really excited about. Where I use the funds will be doubling down on these marketing channels that are working, and also starting to expand into other channels such as retailers. We partnered with well.ca, and that's been an amazing channel for us. We're partnered with some gyms and spas, and so starting to double down and expand into some of the bigger retailers as well.
One of the things that I also wanted, as I'm just kind of looking to at kind of who's joining us, what's the journey been like for men who are you know, kind of exposed to the brand, and what's been the feedback? Because on social media, and you know, kind of talking about that we were earlier, like, you know, there's not everyone's like, yes, please show me how you insert a tampon in TikTok. Like, what's that been like? And for men, what's the response been, and how can they go about kind of, if there's someone in their life, like how do they go about kind of bringing that up? Talking about it. So tell me about that.
There's been really a mix of responses. There's been people who have been very supportive, where they'll go to the menstruators in their life, validate, is this something you experience, try and really understand the problem. We have got a lot of ignorant questions, and I think that's to show that a lot of things still need to change. An example is one time an investor said, does the lubricant provide added pleasure when inserting it? And you're like, that is just not the point of the product.
No.
That's just one example of questions, but
when your TikTok did say there's extra lest at the end, and it could be used. So I mean, to those who appreciate value, you're getting the boost left over. So hey,
but even things like there's a lot of people who will do their own research beforehand, but people will say, I've never even seen a tampon. Can you open it and show us what it looks like? Can you dip it in a cup of water so we can see how it expands? Like, you'd be surprised. There's a range of different knowledge, and we tell people we want to go on this learning journey with you. We realize it's a very stigmatized area. It's not something people talk about. So how can we meet you where you're at and bring you with this learning journey as well?
And going back to the social media piece about the response, like, how do you on social media address that response when it's not positive? Of like, hey, why are you showing this? I mean, I've seen those comments too. That really for some reason, anything, women's health related is like, oh my God, I'm falling apart. It's like the man cold TikTok version. Like, how do you respond to that?
I think just really focusing on the value that we're providing, and we know that in the back of our mind, there's going to be some people who don't agree with this, who think we should be talking about it, but the vast majority of people still really want to see this content. And so I think just, I don't know, almost just kind of going against that and realizing that there's a lot of people who want to see this content out there, who are really valuing the education and not letting the negative comments kind of deter us. And we do reply to all those comments too and say, hey, this is a space that affects 50% of the population. It's a normal bodily function. We shouldn't feel ashamed to talk about it. So I think we do reply to it, but also realize that not everyone's going to understand your problem, and that's okay. You're not building for everyone. You're building for that target.
I was going to say community over negativity.
Exactly.
Always. That's fantastic. Well, thank you for your time. I'm sure you have a ton to do as you build this out, this much, much needed company, Marlo. Thank you so much for your time. I'm just personal note, so just overwhelmed with joy to see a South Asian female face to something like this. It's not something that, in my lifetime, that, or definitely as a younger girl who, there was such a stigma around even using tampons. I have to actually check with my mom today. Does she know I use tampons? I know that sounds crazy, but I'm gonna check with my mom if she knows, because to your point, there's just such a quiet talk about it, which is now, thanks to platforms like TikTok, is in opposition to what is happening, and you're part of that shift. And it's an incredible thing, and so thrilled for you, and thank you for your time.
If that's a secondary message to what we're doing, is just we're so passionate about the space and we're so passionate about menstrual health, but we just want to also inspire other women to be in entrepreneurship. I think being a South Asian woman, on top of it, there's a stigma on being in entrepreneurship. And my parents, they immigrated to this country. When I first told them that I wanted to quit my job at consulting to work on this, they were mind blown. They thought, why would you ever give up all the stability of consulting to go into this? So I think that's an added layer of stigma that people have to go through. And I just want to inspire people to realize that there's so much more to it. We're building our dream company. We're having so much impact. So it's worth it. And if we can inspire more people to enter into entrepreneurship too, so that people can see that there's people who look like them in these positions and in these spaces, I really want to do that as well, in addition to the message we're spreading with Marlo.
And I think just by having conversations like this and, raising and just being in those rooms is doing, I think sometimes, I feel this for myself as someone in the investing space, that you're going about and you're building your dream company, and it's just kind of the ripple effect of that is happening, but you don't know every single ripple. You just go about doing what you do, and that in and of itself is incredible.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't realize how many people
you don't.
It's incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so great chatting with you.
So great. And we're continuing conversations offline with Brown Girl Angels.
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay. Talk to you soon. Bye.